Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into phonation. And hey, I know that sounds like a big scientific word, but it's really just the story of how your voice makes sound. We're going to look at the lightning-fast, honestly brilliant biomechanics of how your body transforms a simple, quiet breath into this beautiful, ringing sound. So let's just get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this, because it's a question literally every new singer eventually asks. How does a simple breath actually turn into a beautiful sound? You know, when we want to sing a really big, impressive note, our first instinct is usually to just push harder, right? To use brute force. We kind of think of singing as this massive physical effort. But actually, creating sound doesn't rely on straining or forcing anything at all. In fact, good singing relies on this automatic, perfectly balanced team inside your throat. Your body actually wants to do the hard work for you as long as you set up the right conditions.
And that brings us to the core message I want you to remember today. Your voice is a team of three. Making a sound isn't just one single muscle straining away all on its own in the dark. It's a cooperative, beautifully balanced partnership of three distinct elements working seamlessly together. None of them can do the job alone. They share the workload. And when these three teammates stay in balance, your voice rings out clear, free, and strong, with surprisingly little effort from you.
So, who's actually on this team? Well, first up, we have your breath. You can think of this air as the fuel that powers your voice. It's always flowing while you sing. Second, we have your vocal folds. These are the buzzing bands that actually create the sound, kind of like how blowing air sets a reed buzzing in a clarinet. And third, we have the springy stretch of those folds. Your vocal folds are surprisingly bouncy. When air pushes them apart, they naturally want to snap right back toward the middle on their own, just like a rubber band bouncing back into shape.
Let's take a closer look at teammate number 2, the vocal folds. Now, you might have heard them called vocal cords before, but folds is actually a way better description. These are two small, delicate bands of tissue resting horizontally right inside your throat, in your voice box. And when I say small, I mean really small. They're roughly the size of your thumbnail. When you aren't singing or speaking, they just sit open so you can breathe normally. But the second you get ready to sing, they come together so the moving air can set them buzzing.
Now, as your breath moves through these folds, something incredibly cool happens. We like to call it the helper effect. When your air squeezes through the tiny, narrow gap between your vocal folds, it actually speeds up. And in physics, when air speeds up through a narrow space, it creates this gentle suction, a little drop in pressure. That suction creates a light pull that naturally tugs the vocal folds back together. So you don't even have to consciously squeeze your throat muscles to close them. The speeding air literally helps draw them closed for you. How cool is that? Okay, let's move on and see how this builds. Let's slow down time to an absolute crawl and walk through the step-by-step repeating loop of a single buzz. Step 1, your folds are resting gently together. Step 2, your breath pushes up from your lungs and pops them open, letting a tiny puff of air slip through. Step 3, as that puff passes through, the air speeds up, and, thanks to that helper effect we just talked about, plus their own springiness, the folds bounce right back. And finally, step 4. The folds tap closed for a split second. That quick, clean tap interrupts the airflow, and that right there is what makes the sound you hear. Then, the air pushes again, and the whole loop just repeats. All right, now snap back to reality for a second. Think about the sheer speed of this process. 1,000. This entire loop, resting, popping open, bouncing back, tapping closed, happens unbelievably fast. When you sing a low note, that loop repeats about 100 times every single second. But when a soprano sings a high note, those little thumbnail-sized bands are repeating that whole process over 1,000 times a second. I mean, there is no way you could ever consciously control muscles moving that fast. Your body just manages this blindingly fast dance completely automatically. But looking at a mechanism moving that incredibly fast naturally brings up a question, right? Why doesn't the buzz just stop after one puff? Think about a pendulum swinging. If you don't keep pushing it, it eventually loses momentum and stops dead. So if these tiny folds are flying open and closed hundreds of times a second, why doesn't the buzz just run out of momentum and stop immediately? How on earth does this incredibly fast system keep itself running without you having to constantly jumpstart it?
Well, the answer is beautifully simple. The air above and below your folds actually has a little bit of weight and motion to it, kind of like a tiny wave that keeps rolling. Because the opening half of the buzz is slightly different from the closing half, it creates this ongoing momentum in the air column. That rolling wave essentially feeds a fresh bit of energy back into every single loop. It's basically a self-sustaining engine. As long as you provide a steady flow of breath, that rolling wave keeps the buzz going entirely on its own.
So, what does it actually feel like when everything is working right? Well, a healthy, beautiful tone is essentially a balancing act. You want your vocal folds to come together fully so no extra air leaks out, but they need to meet very, very gently. Imagine it like a firm but soft handshake between the two folds. When they meet just right, you get this clear, ringing tone that takes almost zero effort to produce. But what happens when we lose that balance?
Let's look at the two extremes of an imbalanced tone. On one side, we have too breathy. This is when your folds meet way too loosely. The air just rushes right past them, resulting in a weak, whispery tone. Plus, you run out of breath incredibly fast because you're literally leaking your fuel. On the other extreme, we have too tight. This is when you kind of panic and squeeze your throat muscles, mashing the folds together too hard. The sound gets pressed and strained, and your throat gets tired almost immediately. Both of these extremes are just a clear sign that the team isn't working together.
But the happy medium? That is where the magic lives. When your folds meet fully but gently, and your breath is perfectly matched to them, the soft outer surface of the folds literally ripples, just like a tiny wave on the surface of a lake. Scientists actually call this the mucosal wave, and it's the physical signature of a happy, healthy, low-effort voice. When you feel that easy, buzzing vibration in your face and throat without any strain, you know for sure your folds are rippling freely. And what's truly amazing here is that your voice is never just frozen in one single setting. It is a living, dynamic system that's always making tiny adjustments for you. When you sing a higher note, your folds automatically stretch longer and thinner so they can vibrate faster. When you sing louder, your breath pressure and your folds step up their energy together. You don't have to find one perfect position and lock your throat in place like a statue. It's a continuous, gentle, moving balance.
Okay, now we need to confront a massive myth that trips up almost every beginner. When we want to sing a big, impressive note, our brain naturally tells us to just blast it with air. But as we can see, more air is absolutely not automatically better. If you shove a massive flood of extra air up into your throat, you actually end up blowing those delicate folds apart. They lose their clean closure, your sound gets weaker and breathier, and then you just end up pushing even harder with your neck muscles trying to be heard. It's a vicious cycle.
So, the crucial point is this: balance is the goal. The golden rule of vocal coaching is that you have to match your breath to your folds. You only want to send exactly enough air to keep that loop buzzing freely. No more, no less. A steady, well-managed stream of breath is what supports that firm, easy closure. When your air and your folds respect each other, your throat stays totally relaxed. And that's how you produce a strong, healthy sound that you can sustain for hours without getting tired.
As amazing as this whole biomechanical process is, it's actually just the very beginning of the journey. The perfectly balanced buzz happening in your vocal folds is just the raw material. On its own, it honestly just sounds like a plain, slightly buzzy hum. But that hum is absolutely packed with acoustic potential. It's the starting fuel that the rest of your vocal tracts, so your throat, your mouth, your tongue, your lips, will catch, shape, and mold into specific vowels, colors, and the beautiful, completely unique tone of your individual voice.
So I want to leave you with this thought to take into your next practice session. Since your body already knows exactly how to perfectly manage this intricate 1,000 beat per second dance, what happens if you just trust it? What if instead of forcing the sound, pushing your breath, and squeezing your throat, you just set up the conditions and let your body's brilliant automatic teamwork take over? When you let the team do its job, singing stops feeling like a fight and honestly starts feeling like flying. And that perfectly balanced buzz? Well, that is exactly what we'll learn how to shape next time.